independent school with faith-based values and an Academy Honor Code. Our academic standards prepare our students for college and beyond. I'm Patrick Duran, headmaster, inviting you to visit us on the mountain or at oakmountain.us. Come see how our warriors are creating legacies.
For more than 70 years, you have turned to Tanner Health System for your healthcare needs. As our community moves forward, Tanner is here for you. Strong, safe, and close to home. Routine medical appointments, urgent elective surgeries, and imaging are back on the calendar at our hospitals and Tanner Medical Group practices. With the safety of our patients, staff, and community always our top priority. Learn more at tanner.org. # We Are Tanner Strong. That's tanner.org. # We Are Tanner Strong.
National headlines and the local stories you care about. WLBB, Carrollton, News Talk, 1330, FM 106.3.
Good Tuesday morning. Welcome to the WLBB Community Voice program here on News Talk 1330, FM 106.3, streaming live online at newstalk1330.com. And this morning, you can check us out on the News Talk 1330 WLBB Facebook page, where we do encourage your comments and your pleasant questions throughout this morning's program. My guest this morning is the District 28 State Representative. His name is Matt Brass. He's the chairman of the Reapportionment and Redistricting Committee. Perhaps we can talk a little bit about that during this program. And his district includes Coweta and Heard, as well as parts of Troup, Carroll, and Fulton counties. I didn't realize 5. You got a little bit of Fulton County even.
I do.
How's that turn out for this race in Fulton County?
Turnout's good everywhere.
Yeah.
Record highs.
Yeah. Matt Brass was unchallenged in his most recent race for the District 28, which was this past November. So 2 more years for Matt Brass representing District 28. As you can imagine, our listeners and viewers this morning, we're going to talk a little bit about the election, and hope to talk about a few more subjects during our 30-minute conversation with Matt. And, of course, again, do encourage your questions and comments this morning. Let me start off with this, Matt Brass. This came out. This was posted by you officially. This is November 7th, so Election Day was the 6th, right?
Mm-hmm. It was the Saturday after the election.
Okay, so this came out after the election.
Correct.
And there was already some concern about suggestions of fraud and everything with the election. Matt Brass, on November the 7th, posted, "They cheated plain and simple. And the mounting evidence shows just that. Elections are only as good as the confidence our citizens have in them. And right now, most of the people I represent, including myself, have little confidence in this validity of this election." Have your feelings changed since that point?
I'll say this. One error I made in that statement is I used the word they. And to me, they is a very overused and very broad term. I do feel like there was fraud in this election, so I'm not going to back down from that statement. But when I say they, that was my mistake, because what I did not intend was not trying to capture. We have a lot of local poll workers and a lot of local election supervisors that I feel like did a wonderful job, and that was in no way a shot at them. And so I will say I apologize for using the word they. But was there fraud in this election? I believe there was. And how has my mentality kind of changed? I'll say this, that there's been no solid proof of mass fraud in this election. But the problem is we haven't really dug in and investigated to find out. And, it really, up until December 3rd, we hadn't done anything in this state as far as investigating. And so on December 3rd, we held 2 Senate hearings. And what I saw and heard in those hearings, and I sat on the committee for the Judiciary Committee, where we had Mayor Rudy Giuliani come in, and we had witnesses come in that had worked the polls and signed sworn affidavits. And what I saw there and what I heard there was our state laws were broken on multiple levels in multiple counties. And what that does, when our state laws are not followed at the local level, what we end up with is we are very susceptible to fraud. And that's where a lot of the confidence has been eroded in this state, and a lot of concerns. And and what I keep hearing is, how do I know my vote's going to count on January 5th? Why do I need to go vote if there's going to be fraud? And that's the question I keep getting. And those are the answers that we as a state have got to find. We've got to find the truth for people. And up until those hearings, and then the House followed the Senate, and they had their hearings, and it's just every single layer of this onion that we unpeel, it just looks worse and worse. And I've heard the analogy of Mama leaves her purse out on the kitchen table, and Johnny comes by and takes $5. Then he takes $10 because he can keep getting away with it. And then he takes $20, he takes $100. And the problem is, we don't know at what point Johnny's at. We don't know how much he's taken. And we do know Johnny's driving a Corvette around, though. So that's the problem. We gotta really dig in and figure out, what is going on. Why are our laws not being followed? And most of our counties in the state are getting it right. Most of them are, but we have several that are not. And Fulton County continues to be a problem child when it comes to elections.
Well, when you say fraud, is there a suggestion that it was intentional, or are we suggesting that there was incompetence?
I think there's a little bit of both. There are things that are being investigated. In fact, the Secretary of State announced yesterday that the GBI is investigating Cobb County. We heard from Susie Voiles that at her poll that she had 110 ballots that were pristine, that were unfolded, and where the bubble looked like it was basically machined in. There was, they're all in the exact same place. We heard that from her, and that deserves a GBI investigation to look in. And if that were the case, then that would be intent. But again, when you go back to our state laws not being followed, I don't know what the intent there is. Part of the problem we've seen in this state with the state laws not being followed, and part of it comes from the settlement agreement. But we had this mass influx of mail ballots, which we as a state were not prepared for that influx. Well, because of that settlement agreement, and you get into signature verification, it's a lot easier on the person that's validating the signatures for them just to go ahead and approve it than it is to actually contest it. Because once it's contested, then you got to bring in this panel of 3 people, and then they got to all look at it, and it's just a longer process. And then if you do that on every single signature that doesn't look right, which there's a lot of them, there's no way you can possibly physically process every single one of those ballots. And so that caused a lot of the problem. Do I think that was intentional? I don't think it was. Mm-hmm. But I think it has caused some issues that we didn't necessarily know coming.
Is there any reason to think that this is the first time that there's been this incompetency or issues with the ballots? Because there does seem to be more of a push this go around.
Well, I'll say this. Gabriel Sterling, who kind of runs the elections for the Secretary of State's office, and he's kind of the operations guy for the Secretary of State. He did come out and say, look, there was fraud in this election, and there's fraud in every election. So, this is not the first time. We heard 2 years ago, or for the past 2 years, we've heard Stacey Abrams say that there's been fraud through voter suppression. We've heard, the Democrats tried to impeach our president over fraud, and saying that the Russians had hacked into the system and won the election for him. And to me, it's how is this any different? Now that our side's saying it, we're getting attacked. Y'all are crazy. You're inciting hate and all this other stuff. And I was like, well, you tried to impeach our president over the same allegations, and are very similar allegations. And so the fact that both sides now see it, it's time to do something about it.
Matt Brass, District 28 State Senator, our guest on this morning's Community Voice program. We could talk about elections all day, but what do you see? Want to try and talk about other things. We have questions and comments on
Sure.
Facebook, and I'll look at those after our break. But what do you see legislators doing in the coming legislation to affect these issues that we've had this past couple months? Any changes that we've made?
Yeah. So one of the first things we've got to do is the legislatures, once we can constitutionally reconvene. As of right now, that'll be on January 11th, second Monday of the year. We've got to come back and really kind of unwind what happened in that settlement agreement. In my mind, I don't think the Secretary of State had the authority to do that. It's the federal government and the federal court system. They determine who gets to vote, but the legislatures determine how we vote. And so we've got to really reclaim that. And when the Secretary of State came in with that settlement agreement, now their argument is they didn't change state law. Our argument is they did change state law. And so we've got to get back in, and we've got to get back to the proper signature verification. We've got to allow the auditing of these machines, making sure that they're doing what we paid for them to do. And then really any vulnerabilities within the system have just got to be all tightened up. I think election integrity and confidence in the election system go hand in hand. And so anything we can do to really tighten up the integrity so that we can restore the confidence.
Georgia's one of maybe 14 or 15 states that electors are not binded to the voters.
Correct.
Is that something that legislators should address?
It has been discussed.
Mm-hmm.
We faced this issue 4 years ago when you had an elector saying he wasn't going to go vote for Donald Trump. Now
was that in Georgia or was that Texas?
That was in Georgia. In Georgia, and he was removed. The problem worked itself out. He was removed, and then then all the electors went up and voted for Donald Trump. And that's because we're a non-binding state. He could have done that. Had he not announced what he was going to do, he could have voted for Colin Worthington for president.
He wouldn't do that twice. No. All right, Matt Brass is the District 28 State Senator, our guest on this morning's Community Voice program. I will take a look at the questions and comments on Facebook right now to see if there's anything else to talk about the elections. Sure. And, of course, we could talk about it for 5 hours, but at this point we have a half hour with Matt Brass, and there's some other things we want to talk about. Also, after this break, I need to ask you the trivia giveaway question. $100, and even you, Matt, can answer it. I'm not going to give the answer, but you can go on our website and answer that, and I'll give you that information after this break. Community Voice brought to you by Tanner Health System, Oak Mountain Academy on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3.
As a graduate of Oak Mountain Academy, I've found that my experience on the mountain prepared me beyond all expectations. As a junior at Auburn University, I approached my studies with great confidence thanks to what I learned at OMA. When I think back on my time on the mountain, I think of my teachers. Their genuine love and concern for me as a student was always evident, and now, as an adult, I still foster those relationships. I'm Carly Robinson, an Oak Mountain Academy alum. Visit oakmountain.us to see how you can offer your child an amazing opportunity to be a warrior.
For more than 70 years, you have turned to Tanner Health System for your healthcare needs. As our community moves forward, Tanner is here for you. Strong, safe, and close to home. Routine medical appointments, urgent elective surgeries, and imaging are back on the calendar at our hospitals and Tanner Medical Group practices. With the safety of our patients, staff, and community always our top priority. Learn more at tanner.org. #WeAreTannerStrong. That's tanner.org. #WeAreTannerStrong.
To the WLBB Community Voice program here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3 this morning, streaming live online at newstalk1330.com and on the News Talk 1330 WLBB Facebook page, where in just 2 seconds I'll take a peek at some of your questions and comments and share those with our guest this morning. But first of all, I want to give away $100. Random Christmas Trivia Cash giveaway going on right now. I'm going to ask you a question. When you know the answer, visit our website, newstalk1330.com. You're going to click the Random Christmas Trivia banner, enter your name, email, phone, and your answer. One entry from the correct answers will be picked at random daily. Just Friday might be the last day. And that contestant will win $100. Please enter only once per day. On December the 19th, that's Saturday, one of our 12 daily winners, along with a 13th winner selected at random that morning, will have a chance to turn their $100 into $1,000 at a live remote broadcast at Mike Bell Chevrolet. The question for today, in the movie A Christmas Story, what was the name of the next door neighbors? Ooh. You got to know this one. They had the dog. Visit the website, newstalk1330. Dogs. Visit the website, newstalk1330.com. All right, we're going to stick with elections a little bit right now, Brett. We got a question from a friend of both of ours, I think. Raffensperger says he will be a signature. There will be a signature checking in Cobb County, but he doesn't expect any inequality or irregularities. Good job. Steve's a nice writer here. How does that evoke confidence for the voter? Carolyn Henderson. Sorry about that. Did I mess that question up?
Well, I'd just say this. I mean, they just started the investigation. They announced it yesterday at 2:00. So it's probably, I'd say, a little. I don't know that I'd be commenting one way or the other on an investigation before it happens. That's just a little nearsighted in my opinion.
And that may have been more of an opinion. I mean, just from Carolyn at that point. I mean,
okay.
The question I don't answer at this
I didn't
point.
see. Honestly, I didn't. When I read that they were announcing the investigation, I didn't read anywhere where it said that. I'm not saying it didn't. I'm not saying the Secretary of State did not say that because I don't know. But it's hard for me to comment on something I didn't read, and I don't know. But I'd say if he did say that, again, you shouldn't prejudge an investigation.
There are a number of drop boxes for this coming election, as there were last election. There's one at the Carroll County Elections Office. There's one in Villa Rica as well. Now, this question is from Sean Paul. Mr. Brass, why are we continuing to allow more voter drop boxes after this election has started? We're being told the Georgia House of Representatives can't change anything. You're saying it's too late to change anything, yet we're opening more polling locations and adding drop boxes. I don't see how one side can get what they want and the other side can't.
Yeah, so they're using some of the flexibility of the public health crisis in the state of emergency that we're in to make some of these changes. So the State Board of Elections did announce the other day that they're adding, I think, 20 of the drop boxes. And, I do agree with kind of what you're saying is, are these going against state law? And, I think they are because the state law says if you're going to hand in a mail-in ballot, it's got to go directly to the supervisor or to their designee. And I don't know that I don't know if there's anything in the law that allows you to designate a box. And the idea is you're handing it in person. And so that kind of takes away, if you wanted to commit fraud, if you wanted to do ballot harvesting and gather up 20, 30, 50 mail-in ballots and go drop them off at a box, that's pretty easy to do. But if you have to go physically hand it to one person, there's a check there. So there actually are some things we're looking at as a legislature. We do have a state law that actually would allow us to overturn the addition of the 20 ballot boxes through the committee process, and so we are looking at that at this time.
I imagine as the discussion with the elections go on with legislators, there may be a suggestion for Sunday voting and maybe same-day registration. What do you think about those?
Well, Sunday voting's already allowed and already done. So
it's Saturday. Where's do you see it around the state on Sunday?
Yes, yeah. There's the they call it quote unquote souls to the polls, where your churches are going after church, and one of the problems we're seeing, or at least we've heard about, is it's one thing if everybody leaves church and goes and votes. That's nothing wrong with that. You're voting in person. There's it's hard to commit fraud that way. But when we've heard stories of churches bringing in mail-in ballots, and again, I'm not saying it actually happened, but there are stories of this happening. It does need to be investigated. They're bringing mail-in ballots, everybody's filling them out, and then someone's going and dropping them all off. That would be ballot harvesting, and that is against the state law. So I hope nobody's doing that. Again, not saying that it is happening, but there are rumors of that did happening. So again, needs to be investigated by the Secretary of State, by the GBI, and make sure that that's not happening for January 5th.
I'll kind of see what you think about Raffensperger's and Kemp's future after this election. After this, but Raffensperger, he's proposed 3 changes that he says would help restore public faith in Georgia elections. First, he says his office should have the power to intervene in counties with, quote, systemic ongoing problems in running their elections. He wants more power to challenge voters suspected of not living where they vote, and changes in absentee ballots, like requiring voters to mail a copy of their voter ID. And I think that kind of goes with something that the Senate Majority Caucus put out a couple weeks ago.
Correct.
Absentee ballots should be reserved for people who absolutely cannot make it to the polls, like those serving in the military or college students.
Correct. Or people that, for health reasons. If if there's a legitimate health reason you can't get to the poll, if you're handicapped or whatever the case may be, that should be fine. But just getting an absentee ballot for no reason, it's just so susceptible to fraud, and that's the problem, especially when you get into the signature verification and the issues we're having there. Again, it just opens us up for fraud.
I'm going to take our final break here, come back with about 9 minutes. I have a couple other questions to ask you, especially your role on the redistricting committee, chairman. I'd like to talk about that, give people an idea of what that's about, what that entails. And that should be coming out next year, right?
Yes, sir. As soon as the census numbers come in, we'll get right to work on it.
You think, were they slowed down at all? Will they be slowed down at all because of COVID?
Yeah, so normally, and if we got time,
let's hold it. Let's take this break. Make sure we say hi to our sponsors here. We're going to come back with about 8.5 minutes. Community Voice brought to you by Tanner Health System, Oak Mountain Academy, News Talk 1330, FM 106.3.
For more than 70 years, you have turned to Tanner Health System for your healthcare needs. As our community moves forward, Tanner is here for you. Strong, safe, and close to home. Routine medical appointments, urgent elective surgeries, and imaging are back on the calendar at our hospitals and Tanner Medical Group practices. With the safety of our patients, staff, and community always our top priority. Learn more at tanner.org. Hashtag We Are Tanner Strong. That's tanner.org. Hashtag We Are Tanner Strong.
At Oak Mountain Academy, our daily schedule includes convocation, prayer, and the Pledge of Allegiance. By doing so, we build a family-like community where all students grow and flourish and personal faith is encouraged. Through community service and a historical approach to biblical study, our students are taught the value of the warrior way, honesty, respect, and responsibility. Oak Mountain Academy. We are a family creating legacies. To learn more, visit oakmountain.us.
All right, welcome back to the WLBB Community Voice Program, News Talk 1330 FM 106.3, streaming live online at newstalk1330.com and on the News Talk 1330 WLBB Facebook page. This morning, you can see my guest. He is Matt Brass Knuckles. We were talking about that to be his wrestling name. And he represents the 28th Senate District. He's also the chairman of the Reapportionment and Redistricting Committee, and he should be getting a lot of attention next year. Can you tell us about that role and how you see that happening, that playing out over next year?
Sure. So, well, first off, it's, we, by law, by the Constitution, every 10 years after the census numbers come in, we have to reapportion and redistrict the entire, each state Senate district based on population shifts, each state house, and then the congressional seats. So, by the Constitution, we have to do that as soon as the census numbers come out. Now, the census was delayed back in the summer due to the pandemic, and normally those numbers would come in the last week of March. In fact, I think they have to be reported to the president by the third week of March, and then down to the legislatures. That I think they have a couple weeks to get to us from that point to when they get to the president's desk. So, with that delay, we are now looking at the census numbers. Last I heard is sometime in August. They may have gotten caught up. I haven't heard an update on that, but been kind of wrapped up in election stuff right now. But assuming we get them in August, we'll sit down and really start kind of holding our public hearings, meeting with legislators about the districts. And the reason we meet with legislators is because they're really the experts of that particular district. They, we can't go in and divide up what's called a community of interest, and it's a very loose term. There's no real definition of what a community of interest is. But I like to use the area I represent up in Fulton County. I've got Chattahoochee Hills in Fulton County. Well, within Chattahoochee Hills, you've got Serenbe, and then you've got Rico. And to me, those are two distinct communities of interest, and I don't want to go drawing a line through the middle of either one of those. I just use that as an example, but those are, the point of talking with legislators is to understand the district and understand where those communities are, to make sure that we are trying to keep them as whole as possible. So once we get the census numbers, we start holding the public hearings. Now this year it could look a little different. It used to be you tour around the state. We're still going to try to do that, but based on what's going on with the pandemic at that time, we'll probably hold a lot more Zoom meetings, and probably actually be able to cover more of the state that way as well. And then we'll sit down and we'll draw the lines. Some districts are going to have to lose population because they've grown. Some districts will have to gain population because people have moved, and that we're seeing that more in your rural areas. Your rural areas, people are kind of flocking towards healthcare, or towards the cities, wherever for jobs, for whatever reasons. They may be moving, but they are, the rural areas are losing population. So those districts will tend to get bigger, and your urban and suburban districts will tend to get smaller. And so we just got to make sure that we're drawing those. We're following the Voters' Rights Act. We're following the Constitution. And I'll tell our listeners, this is what I've been telling leaders and the legislature, folks in the legislatures, is there's no excuse for this not being the most transparent process that we've had in redistricting. I mean, just with technology these days, I just don't think the public's going to take any excuses on these closed door meetings and things like that. And so we've got to have an open process. We do know that the Democrats, Eric Holder and former President Obama have formed a group that's raised about $450 million. So it doesn't matter if God came down and drew these districts himself, God is going to end up in court. So we're prepared for that. And so with keeping that in mind, again, I feel like as long as we have a transparent process, and we draw fair maps, that it'll hold up in court.
Well, just at a glance, with that, not binding you to this, anything you would say right now, but if you look at your district and maybe Dugan's district, well, let's go with your district, just because you do just have like a small portion of Carroll County. Do you think there's a good chance that you're going to go east?
I don't know which way it will go. I do know the district more than likely is I'm going to have to shed some voters, meaning the population has grown.
Maybe not shed voters, but shed property. I mean, or county.
Well, and yes,
because you're not going to lose actual voters, right?
No, you will. I'll lose actual voters. I'll have to, because basically, so for Senate districts, there's 56 Senate districts. The population of Georgia has obviously grown since the last time this was done, and so what you got to do is take the total population and divide it by 56. And then you can only deviate off of that number by so many. So back in 2001, when they drew the districts, I think it was roughly 170,000 per district, per Senate district, and we're looking at more like 190,000 come this next cycle. So, and you look at the growth of the areas I represent, in mainly Coweta County, there's been so much growth that I think I'm going to probably be at 195, maybe 200,000 people in Senate District 28. And to get that down into that 190 range, I'm going to have to shed about 10,000 voters, which essentially is property. But that's kind of what we're looking at.
Matt Bryce, thanks for coming out this morning.
Thank
We
you,
appreciate
Colin.
it.
Thanks
We
for
really
having me.
will.
And
Absolutely.
thank you, everybody, for listening.
We wish you good luck in the next year.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you listening this morning to the WLBB Community Voice program, as always brought to you by Tanner Health System, Oak Mountain Academy. And questions and comments, if you watch this program later on in the day, go ahead and post those up there. And I'm sure Matt will take a peek and try and answer those the best he can later on this afternoon. Enjoy your Tuesday.